This week on the GCN Racing News Show, an unbelievable number of crashes at Tirreno Adriatico and one of the most dramatic stage finishes I've seen for a long time. We also have the youngest winner of Paris-Nice for 38 years, plus the Women's World Tour, which continues with the Cobbles of the Ronde Van Drenthe. We'll start this week though with Paris-Nice. The race to the sun certainly lived up to its name this year, finishing under the bright blue skies of Nice, but starting with far from ideal conditions in northern France. The race was dominated by Team Sky. Michał Kwiatkowski going into the overall lead on stage 4, extending that in the following day's individual time trial. However, he came slightly unstuck on the only mountaintop finish on the penultimate day. Unable to stick with the pace of the top climbers on the Col de Turini, but thankfully for him, his teammate Bernal could. In fact, that day was yet more evidence that the Colombians are set to dominate the high mountains for years to come. At the head of the race, we had a battle between two incredible Colombian talents, 22-year-old Daniel Martinez of EF Education First, eventually getting the better of Miguel Angel Superman Lopez of Team Astana to take his first professional road race win. And then behind, the fastest two riders up that climb were Bernal, along with Nairo Quintana, putting them into first and third respectively on the general classification. And so it came down to the final day of racing. Quintana threw everything at it, employing a similar tactic to the one that Marc Soler successfully employed on the same stage last year. Ultimately though, Team Sky would have enough strength in depth to defend Bernal's lead, but it was great to watch, as this stage seems to be every single year. And so Egan Bernal becomes the youngest winner of Paris-Nice since Stephen Roche back in 1981. What I find most amazing though about Bernal's performance wasn't his climbing. I mean, we all know just how good he is at that, but the way he rode in the first 3 days of crosswinds. I mean, I don't know, but I'm presuming that this isn't a style of racing regularly encountered in Colombia, but Bernal not only survived the crosswinds, he embraced them, and if anything, he was one of the strongest riders there too. Now, of course, he did have a brilliant coach in the form of Welshman Luke Rowe, but you can get all the tips in the world. That doesn't mean anything unless you've got the balls and the power to ride at the front of the race, and Bernal had both in abundance. That also means that Team Sky have now won 6 of the last 8 editions of Paris-Nice with 5 different riders. Although, as I pointed out to Neil Rogers on Twitter, that still makes Sean Kelly better than Team Sky. Incredible really to think that he won that race 7 times in a row. Fair play to Nairo Quintana though. He has often been criticised in recent years for not attacking enough, but he laid it all on the line on that last stage and it almost worked. There were a few other notable performances from the week. Sam Bennett taking 2 stage victories was one of them. He was less than happy with his team Bora Hansgrohe at the start of the year because they've snubbed him for the Giro d'Italia this year, but he's certainly given them something to contemplate. He's now won a stage of every stage race that he's competed in this year, and with Sagan not quite 100% at the moment, you wouldn't put it past him taking Milan-San Remo on Saturday either. Jack Hague finished 4th overall, and I thought that was another step up the ladder in his career. Already one of the most dependable mountain domestiques around, but at 25 years of age now, increasingly making a case of being a team leader himself. His teammate, Simon Yates' stage win at the individual time trial was the first of his career in that discipline, sending out a very strong message to his rivals at this year's Giro d'Italia. Luke Rowe, bossing the peloton not only in the first few days, but also on the climbs, was mightily impressive. It's going to be interesting to see, in fact, what he can do at the upcoming Cobbles Classics. And speaking of classics, what about that ride from Oliver Naesen on the final day? Former Belgian champion, big classic specialist, he found the strength to stick with the climbers on that last day and finished 2nd on the stage to Jon Izagirre. Very impressive indeed. And I also say that riders like Naesen or Michael Velgren, for example, that can do pretty much everything, are worth their weight in gold in this modern era of reduced team sizes. Also fitting that bill is Magnus Cort Nielsen of Team Astana. He was superbly impressive in his victory on stage 4. And Thomas de Gendt, who as ever is just impressive in being Thomas de Gendt. He went home with the mountains classification. Now on to the other major stage race that's on right now, Tirreno Adriatico, and it didn't get off to the best of starts for Bora Hansgrohe. An incident which, quite rightly, ignited a lot of debate about rider security in races. Not the first time it's happened at that race either. Peter Sagan swerved a spectator crossing the road in the final individual time trial a couple of years ago there, and stage winners Mitchelton Scott almost came to grief in the closing kilometre this year. Many fingers were pointing the blame at various parties, but it is a tough one. I mean, it's nigh on impossible to barrier entire courses. Security officials can't keep an eye on every single member of the public at the roadside, but there are certainly some lessons to be learned there because this sort of thing really shouldn't be happening. If you've got any suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below this video. Now, as mentioned, Mitchelton Scott took the race honours, Michael Hepburn going into the race lead, and I love these stats sourced by Amati Puraili. Luke Durbridge of that team averaging 449 watts for 22.5 minutes, taking 8 pulls at the front of the team at over 550 watts. Now, I was accused of hyperbole last week for saying that Alaphilippe is on another level this year, but his demonstration on stage 2 makes me think he is. Yes, he was already great, and yes, he's already won loads of big races, but right now, he's just got that level of confidence about him that I've not seen before. And to be honest, I've got a level of confidence about him. When he's in the front group of a race of a stage like stage 2 of Tirreno, I just look at him and think that he's just not going to be beaten. But just as I was thinking that I'd been proven right, he was beaten both yesterday and on Saturday, so maybe, or probably, I'm wrong. Saturday's stage was really quite incredible. Alexei Luchenko definitely is a man who's raised his game this year. He attacked with 38 kilometres to go, carved out a lead of over a minute to some of the best riders in the world, then crashed. Twice. Got back up, got caught almost in sight of the finish line, and then still found the strength to outsprint everybody to take the stage win. It really was an incredible display of resilience, strength, and terrible bike handling. But hats off, that was absolutely nuts. And Luchenko is a thoroughly deserving GCN Rider of the Week this week. His team also, Astana, are on fire right now. Jakob Fuglsang pulled off a similar feat the following day, except that he managed to stay upright and solo to the win, which he then dedicated to the late Michele Scarponi. That means that squad now has 19 race wins in 2019, which is even more than De Koning Quickstep. Today looks set to be another clash of the sprinters, the first of which incidentally was won by Elia Viviani ahead of Sagan and Gaviria. The Italian champion averaged over 68 km/h in the closing 350 metres and peaked at 74. Absolutely crazy. Next time you're on a fast descent, check out how fast that feels. There's been no stage racing in the women's peloton this week, but we have had a couple of one-day races. First up, a fine win for Audrey Cordon-Rago of Trek Segafredo in the, just bear with me on this one, Drenthe Acht van Westerveld. Only 36 riders managed to finish what was a particularly attritional day with high winds. The main hurdle in the race is a climb over a landfill site called the Vanberg. Rago attacked a small group into a headwind and had carved out a 90-second lead by the time she reached the finish line. And that was in fact her first road race UCI win in over 4 years. And then on Sunday we had the Ronde Van Drenthe. Unfortunately there the organisers had to take out one of the most notorious sectors of Cobbles in the race due to the condition of the road, but nevertheless it was another extremely tough race held in horrendous conditions, with less than 50 riders finishing, all absolutely covered in mud. It came down to a sprint from 3 riders, Marta Bastianelli, the former world champion, given the win despite a slightly controversial change of line in the closing sprint. Chantal Blaak did protest after the finish, but the result stood, with the Dutch national champion taking second and Ellen van Dijk in third. Absent at that race was Anna van der Breggen. She was beginning her challenge at the Cape Epic with Anneke Langvad. And they got off to the best possible start, crushing the prologue by over 2.5 minutes. And it's basically hard to see anybody beating that pair over there. The men's prologue was taken by the pairing of Nino Schurter and Lars Forster, and the 8-day race covers over 600 kilometres with close to 17,000 metres of climbing. Ian Bibby made it 3 wins in the Zwift KISS Super League last week, taking place on the London circuit and finishing up Keith Hill. Bibby was biding his time and ended up making his move halfway up, eventually coming in 3 seconds in front of Alex West of the Zwift Academy Super Team. Madison Genesis once again won the round and extended their lead in the team's classification. I'm going to end this week once again with a few sad pieces of news, I'm afraid to say. The cycling world lost 3 more last week. First up, UK cycling legend Keith Butler. Butler was a brilliant rider back in his day, a multiple national champion, and helped Tom Simpson to his World Championships win in 1965. But Keith did as much, if not more, for cycling after he retired from competing. He set up the Surrey League in 1983, organising countless races, in fact up to 170 a year at its peak, some of which I actually competed in myself. Without his vision, far fewer people would have ever pinned a number on their backs, and those races were also instrumental in the early careers of many riders who went on to great things in the sport. We also lost a cyclist at the complete opposite end of his career, Tate Meintjes. Just 19 years of age, he was knocked off his bike last week whilst practicing on the Redlands TT course and didn't survive the impact. There's really nothing you can say about a life taken so early. It's quite devastating. And on exactly the same note, news is just coming in that Stef Loos also lost his life at a race on Sunday. What we're hearing is that he was one of 3 riders sent off course accidentally at the Alfred Gieden road race on Sunday and was then involved in a collision with a van. Goes without saying that our condolences and thoughts are with all of the friends and family of Keith Butler, Steph Loos and Tate Mainkeys.